Hello, everybody. James here, and this is part two because either my internet's down or the Zoom's down or whatever. We've got books. I've got two. Dutch has got two. They're in the description. T-shirts coming out soon. Give us 5 stars on iTunes, all that kind of thing. Right, that was 13 seconds, that intro, Dutch. We made it 10 minutes into the original episode, and then we just gave up because it just kept stuttering and whatnot. Anyway, so we're going to start again, and do you want me to just tell the Norway story instead?
Hey, folks, he has a great Norway story. He's not going to tell it right now, but I was highly entertained during the downtime that we had. I was highly entertained with James's story.
Yeah, I was threatened with expulsion. Anyway, so the first you heard of, let's say it first, Stephanie leaving.
Well, I was yesterday. Now this starts Friday. This is Wednesday, everybody, and it started on Tuesday. So Tuesday, I'm sitting around, just doing nothing, just cruising along. And actually, it's kind of like Tuesday night. And I'm reading that the WWE is sold to Saudi Arabia. And I went, what? Because we've been hearing that WWE is going up for sale. And that's one of the reasons Vince came back to facilitate the sale to the highest bidder, of course. But the Saudi Arabians, and I predicted that Saudi Arabia, that country, or that fund they have there, it's called the Public Investment Fund. They're in the market they bought the golf tour, and they're going to buy more stuff, I'm sure. But WWE, since they've been going there for the last 3, 4, 5 years, WWE is well acquainted with the Saudi Arabians. They see how well it is accepted. Pro wrestling, how well it is accepted in Puerto Rico. In Saudi Arabia.
We were talking about Puerto Rico as well off air.
And to me, it was a natural fit. And when I read, of course, you had the usual suspects in the running: Comcast and NBC and CBS and Netflix and Amazon and HBO. You had the normal companies in line to buy WWE. But I always thought Saudi Arabia had the inside track because, like I said, they've been going there for the past 5 or 6 years. They know the people. They know the key players. And when it finally was in print, I didn't believe it. I said, nah, wait a minute. I made a prediction a month ago, I think. And I said, I think they would be probably your number one player. And everybody looked at me with that, what they call the jaundiced eye. Yeah. Do your eyebrows. There you go. They looked at me funny, like, nah. Because they are some drawbacks, and there's a lot of pluses to it. And the thing about Vince, and we'll get into this today, Vince, when he resigned and went home, everybody thought, he's gone. He's done. Even I thought he was done because I think at 77 years old, he would go back to his home in Stanford and sit around. But I was wrong. He didn't sit around. He didn't sit around and play checkers. He was on that phone all day long, sending texts, sending emails, making calls, and he was setting this whole thing up. Because Vince, to me, he's always been 3 steps ahead of the game. And that's why he's been as successful as he is. Because he didn't go back to retire. He went back, and that was his way of entertaining himself. And that's his hobby. He doesn't have a hobby. His hobby is work. That's what he's a 20-hour-a-day man because he only sleeps like 3 or 4 hours a day. But he was setting this whole deal up. And you told me earlier you don't believe in conspiracy theories. I kind of do, especially when it comes to wrestling, because always that undercurrent, this is happening here, but under here, this is happening. And neither one of them know what the other one is doing. So Vince really had the high road because he was out of the public eye. He was out of WWE's eye. They thought he just went home, but he wasn't. So he's working, and since he owns over 50% of the trading stock,
he owns 80% of the voting shares.
The voting shares, which means that He can sell to who he can approve sale to whoever he wants to.
Well, that brings me up to a completely different question that I asked you in the first attempt at recording this. Is with the retirement of Vince McMahon, do you think he was smart enough that he always knew that this was going to be his ace in the hole and he could always come back? Or do you think maybe he sort of started figuring this out a little later down the line when he was really bored and just couldn't stay home?
Well, I also found out that he found a loophole in all this through an attorney, of course, through a legal process. And he's fixed it now, so they can't oust him no matter what. I don't care what he was ousted for. He could have been ousted for actually murder. But if he still has the 83% of the voting shares, he would have to vote if he was in prison. He would have to vote from prison to approve it, correct or no?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah.
Even if he was convicted, he would still own it.
And that still relates to TV negotiations as well, for TV rights, not just the sale of a company. So he's even more powerful than he was before.
Well, he has controlled that company by basically a one-man show all these years. And now when they got enough dirt on him to get him kicked out, well, he didn't like that. Vince doesn't like to be told what to do. He would be a horrible employee. He wouldn't do what you told him to do. He would always be doing something else or trying to advance himself. But as an employee, I don't think he would be very good. As a boss, he was ruthless. And he didn't care. He's, in a lot of ways, Vince is kind of a sociopath, I think, because I think he has some personality problems. But for what he did, he actually did a great job for 40 some odd years, because he built it from, okay, let's take Memphis. He built it from a company maybe twice or three times the size of Memphis, but they had bigger towns. They had a bigger population to draw from. So they drew more money, they drew more people because there was more people to draw from. But he took that little company and he turned it into what it is today. So since it has and I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I did predict this about a month ago because Vince already knows those people. He's well aware that they all know him. They're comfortable with each other. That's why I think this deal came about.
We will, well, as we did before, I can't stop referencing the other podcast that didn't quite work out, but I'm going to give you an even more abridged version of the timeline. So, Vince McMahon, he retired July 22nd, 2022 on Twitter. Vince McMahon, in late December 2022, sent WWE an email outlining his desire to return to WWE. Says, WWE is at a critical juncture. You need me, Vince McMahon, to get the best price for TV rights deals and potentially a sale if it ever happened. WWE said, we'll have you back, but only in that capacity, not in creative or day-to-day or in the office. Vince also, I should say, wanted to bring back George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, who he himself fired back in early 2020. They were CEOs, and Nick Khan eventually replaced them. And after McMahon sent his initial email to the company in December, WWE Board of Directors informed him WWE Board of Directors held a vote and unanimously voted against Vince returning to the company. And then all of a sudden,
which didn't sit well with Vince.
Exactly. It did not sit well with Vince. So that, in response, is when Vince McMahon plays his ace in the hole and says, look, I have the voting shares. I will not. In fact, I'll tell you exactly what it says. I would like to be clear that unless I have direct involvement and input as executive chairman from the outset, I will not be able to support or approve any media rights deals or strategic transaction. Wink, wink, sale is what it means. This position is not driven by self-interest, of course, or a lack of confidence in the company's management team, but rather by my commitment to doing what is best for WWE and all its shareholders, and by my strong belief that maximizing the outcome of these processes will require close coordination and unified and efficient decision. Blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying? He needs to do.
Yeah.
And then in SEC filing in January 6th, 2023. It says that Vince is back, and so is George Barrios and Michelle Wilson. Two other board members quit in protest. 3 board members are removed to make way for those 3 board members, Vince and the other 2. And from there on, you tell me what you're thinking.
Well, he wrote him a letter, a very nice diplomatic letter saying, I will do everything I can to help WWE and to help all of you. And then he says, but, always the but unless this demand is met, I'm going to stick it up your butt and you're not going to do anything without my approval. So it's up to you if you want me there or not. And if you don't want me there, don't expect to move anything because I won't vote anything. So now they're between a rock and a hard place. They don't know what to do. So they said, hey, and that's why the 2 people quit. That's why he fired the other 2. And Stephanie, that's kind of baffling me. Why did she resign again? This is the second time this year, second time in less than a year that she's quit. So, and who knows what he's going to do.
We will bring up Stephanie in a minute. Do you think Vince has just got a spectacular lack of self-awareness as far as just like how bad of a look it is for him to be the face of this company?
Well, I don't think he wants to be the face of it, but he does want to get money for it. That fund, they have $620 billion to dispose of, to invest. If they got that much money, Vince was saying, and I was reading today, I did say it was worth $6 billion. I read today now it's up to $8 billion because the stock price has gone up at least 20%.
Yep, it's gone up to around $89, $90 a share now.
I had $88 a share, up from 72, I think.
From January 5th, I don't have it here at the moment. It's on another page, but it's somewhere around 70, 71 on January 5th. It jumped up $15 in a day after Vince McMahon had basically resumed leadership role. And then now it's up to 89, 90, around there.
Okay, I'm kind of stupid in stocks. It's $71, but the day before Vince jumps, right? Mm-hmm. Jumps back in. Mm-hmm. What makes it jump to 88? The stockholders themselves?
Maybe more. I'm terrible with stocks. Do more people buy?
Well, I don't know. Why does it jump to 88? Who sets that price? I guess the stockholders. I don't know.
I think it's more people buying stock, and that's what drives the price up.
Supply and demand, I guess.
Yeah.
But hey, they only got 7. If Vince has 83. Now, I don't even understand that. 83% of the voting shares. What does that mean?
It means there are 2 different types of stock, and one type of stock has very, very little voting, is a percentage of voting, essentially. And the B-grade stock, which Vince has almost infinitesimally more voting numbers or power than the A stock that everybody else gets.
Well, when we get to talking about stocks, I'm kind of lost, but I do know that it jumped, which is a positive sign. I think Vince, the consumer, or the people that buy stocks, they see him coming back as a positive sign that stock is going to do well. And who knows where it's going to end up.
Well, here's the thing, right?
This whole process is still fluid right now at this moment. We don't know where it's going. That's why it's fun to talk about it. Because if this happens, and if this happens, and if that, and what the hell. And Stephanie, like I mentioned before, she just resigned for the second time, which I'm kind of baffled by. I don't know why she got out of the way. She got out of the way before, then they let Vince go, then she came back. And who knows what was going on in that McMahon household? What all this is going on? They meet at Vince's house, Sunday dinner, Saturday dinner, or whatever. Talk. Who knows? But they're going to make a movie out of this, believe me.
Well, they were actually going to make a movie out of Vince's life on Netflix, and then that ended up having to be on hold, I think. But I'm going to ask you the main question, or one of the main questions here is, Vince loves WWE. It's his baby.
Yes.
He's got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank already. He's got more money than he knows what to do with it, I'm sure. Why does he want to sell it? Why does he want to sell the company he loves for more money that he'll never probably spend ever?
Well, he can sell the company, but that don't mean Vince is going anywhere. He's still going to be in there because the new plan that I have read, like I said, I actually researched some of this, which wrestlers never do. We just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Vince is going to kick everybody out that he don't like. He could go in there with a bunch of Saudi Arabians, but he's still going to be there, and his family's going to be there. Triple H is going to be there, and Stephanie's going to be there, and some of his close personal friends. Kevin Dunn, he'll be there, but he'll keep his same loyal crew around him that he had before. It's almost like Vince is the president of a country, and when they try to depose him, well, you can depose him. Then he comes back, and who comes back with him? His old cadre of supporters and friends and diehards. They're going to come back with him. So, and what that's going to do, I don't know. But I've never been this excited about a wrestling move in 30 years, really, because it's interesting to talk about. You have so many variables. You have so much money. Anyway, keep talking. It's like we're driving down the road and we're talking and the conversation doesn't stop. So if you're driving a truck, and I meant to bring this up to you, a lot of people have written me via email at Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com and told me how much they enjoy the show. Because it's just me and you talking back and forth. And like I'm saying, they're sitting in the back seat and they're eavesdropping on this conversation. And they have told me that they enjoy this show, and I'm not tooting our horn, they enjoy this show more than any other. How many subscribers do we have now?
On YouTube, we've got like 81,000 subscribers.
81,000. So go to YouTube, subscribe to the show, and let's see if we can get it to 85.
Yeah.
Let's push that subscribe button.
I want 100,000. I want another silver plaque on that wall.
Do you?
Oh,
I'll send you one.
Oh, thank you.
I'll send you one. Okay. Good.
I was going to say,
continue.
If this is just us in the car, I would have told you the Norway story a second time. But I'm stopping myself now.
You're gonna push that Norway story, and we're gonna have to tell it.
No, I'm not going to tell it. I'm not going to tell it. It takes too long.
And guys, when we talk about a Norway story, James just recently took a vacation to Norway. I mean, who goes to Norway? Not James is the only guy I ever known that goes to Norway, but he told me the story about immigration and he's trying to leave and he had a problem with his passport. Very, very interesting story. We'll tell it later.
Yeah.
And let me apologize. We promised Jack Swagger, Jake Hager, but since I took my little bump, fell, had to go to the hospital. That was postponed, but we do have Jack Swagger scheduled to return, and we'll let you know because his interview, and he would have a lot to say about this WWE information that we're getting right now.
Well, we have to get him on soon then, get him on the news. I'll tell you what, we'll go to this then. Same day, Vince McMahon comes back. Tony Khan sends out a tweet sort of following jokey tweet that some people got really butthurt over. I thought it was funny. Everyone at work is being so nice to me these past 24 hours. I wonder why. It must be belated holiday spirit.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Well, Tony, they say Tony's father's worth $8 billion.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money, but it's a long way from $620 billion. Because that's what the Saudis have, and that's what they're going to spend. Not 620. But I did read that I just said this that they were worth up to $8 billion now. How they come up with these figures, I have no idea. I'm just reading it. So why don't we put out, James, that we heard that it's worth $9 billion. And then somebody else will say, hey, Dutch and James said it's worth $9 billion. time the day's over, be worth like $15 million.
We've established already that we'd be terrible reporters because we sort of just like
Oh,
halfway
we
through,
would.
we sort of just sputter and start and say, "Do you know what you're talking about?" No, I don't know what I'm talking about. We'll move on, but then we'll
Yeah.
speculate anyway.
Well, we'd make good reporters because, hey, we're like everybody else. If an NBC reporter, he throws his opinion in there, and that's what we're doing. We're just throwing our opinions in here. So anyway, continue.
This is nothing about Vince, but I wanted to bring this up ages ago. But Tony Khan, I'm presuming you follow him on Twitter. He seems to really revel in the bad things or the interesting things that happen in WWE constantly. Do you think that's a sort of almost a bad luck of a CEO of a company to consistently mention your competition?
He's having fun. But see, WWE is not like that. WWE, you couldn't hold a gun to their head and say mention AEW. They wouldn't do it. They never mentioned the competition. Never. Now WCW, they would mention WWF. It was WWF back in those days. They would mention them, and all the other companies would. They mentioned WWE. They mention them, but WWE now, they have no reason to mention another company because in Vince's mind, why remind them there's another wrestling company out there? Because, I mean, they're not paying us anything for it. So if they want to watch it, they'll watch it. If they don't, we're not gonna remind them.
Do you think the Vince McMahon story will affect AEW in any way at all?
Nah, well, it could. I don't know. It may open up, and we need to talk about this. And remind me, let's don't end this podcast.
I know. I'll write it down.
Some talent have gone on record as saying they won't work in Saudi Arabia. If they won't work in Saudi Arabia, does that mean they won't work for Saudi Arabian bosses?
We will be talking about that, in fact, in a very short while. We'll go to the main story of the day, is actually Stephanie McMahon has resigned. She tweeted the following January 10th, 2023, quite late in the evening, I think, as well, wasn't it? I won't do the entire thing, but dear WWE Universe, about 8 months ago, I took a leave of absence within a few weeks, unexpectedly had the opportunity of a lifetime. The absence is an interesting story of itself. Privilege to return as the co-CEO and chairwoman of the board of WWE, kind of put into words how proud I am, etc., etc., etc. Very magnanimous. And then now forever together, Steph. And she goes, and then a few minutes later, WWE brings out the official press release that Vince McMahon is now the new executive chairman. Imagine the timing, would you believe?
Oh, yeah. Well, Stephanie had to get that out there first. She had to beat that out. And I really love the English language because there's so many ways to say something with, like you said, magnanimous words, and build it up and build it up. And she's so thankful. And okay, we got it, Steph. Go home and enjoy your kids and be a mama. And I know you've worked hard. And then here comes the news that Vince is bullying his way, and that's basically what he did. He bullied his way back in financially and threatened them that if they can't do anything without him, regardless of what charges they got on him, regardless of what dirt they have on him. And remember, we talked, was it last week or week before, about being the fly on the wall in WWE offices?
Yeah, last week.
All the people that worked against Vince to get him out, and he knows who they are because he still has his connections there. Because people that are smart will play the two ends versus the middle, which everybody does if you want to keep a job. I mean, if you have some kind of a confrontation at work, or you got to take one side or the other. Maybe not publicly, but in your head, you're saying, "Well, where am I? Are you with the new group, who at this point are unproven? Are you with the old group, who's the one who hired you in the beginning?" So if you had to bet, who would you bet on? And I would have bet on Vince, but I never would. And I will go on record saying this. I didn't think he'd ever be back because regardless of he had 83% of voting shares or not, he may want to go home. But I found out, no. Well, I didn't find out. I just figured out that he went home to plan a takeover of his own company. Oh, it's great. It's great. I love this.
What is it? Why has Stephanie left twice? Because the first time she leaves of her own accord, I suppose in quotation marks almost, maybe the same as this is in quotation marks, she leaves of her own accord. And then a few days later, there's a public burial in Business Insider, I think, where it calls into question Stephanie's ability to sell advertising and get sponsorship for WWE. This was a role she took from Michelle Wilson when she was fired in early 2020. And apparently the company wasn't happy with her, and they weirdly make that public, which I find it so weird. Do you think there's a bit of trouble between Vince and Stephanie personally, where they've actually had a fallout?
She's his daughter. Being his daughter, it soothes a lot of hurt feelings. No matter what she did, she could go out and shoot somebody on the street. Vince is not going to disown her. She's his daughter. And there's all kind of ways to fix stuff. Vince, and I don't know if that's it or not. The wording of when she went home, she has failed to sell proper advertising or enough.
Yeah, this was in
that surprises me.
Yeah,
because you usually don't see the reason why they were let go. Usually, they go home for personal reasons, or they just leave. So you all you really want to do in that communique or that little blurb you put out is to tell people that Stephanie's not here anymore.
Well, then that clearly makes it seem like she's got at least one enemy within WWE higher up.
And
who is it?
Again, they know who that enemy is, and whoever that enemy is, Vince knows, Stephanie knows, because AAA, everybody probably knows, and that enemy, that whoever put that out or worded that announcement like that, they may be looking over their shoulder, maybe not for long. And they say Vince is going to come back. He's not going to be in creative. And where else is he not going to be?
In the office, apparently.
Well, he don't want to be in that office, probably. He's probably living off his cell phone anyway. And he's probably got a secretary traveling with him all the time. Or wherever he is, she's right there, or he's right there. So he doesn't need to be in his office. So, but tremendous. I love this story. I can't talk about it enough.
Now, do you know, I've never asked you this. Stephanie McMahon, as a person, as a performer, as office staff, as higher up, how much did you interact with Stephanie? In fact, first of all, did you ever speak to her or even see her around shows in the mid-90s when you were doing the Uncle Zebekiah thing?
No. Never saw her around. Maybe a little bit, but not that much. Because all that stuff, when she was, she did the deal with Triple H and he did all that stuff. That was later after I had gone. I saw her quite a bit when I was there back in 2013, 2014. She was around all the time. Nice lady. I liked her.
Yeah. What exactly were her roles? Did she just do everything at that point?
I didn't really know her role then. She was just there. I figured she was actually a talent when I was there. And I guess she wore a lot of hats because she filled in where she was needed, I think. But as a talent, she has almost a uncanny sense of memorizing lines. And I've seen this. She doesn't flub interviews. She's very, very good at interviews, very fluid, very natural. And I've heard and I've read that when she reads lines, she may not read them back verbatim, or word for word, but she gets the point across more like in her way than she would have just by reading the lines. She can memorize. She has almost perfect memory.
She speaks like Vince does, especially in interviews, promo interviews, excuse me. And it's one of those things that she's picked up from her dad, is when she always describes each and every one of you, maybe the most overused line in WWE in 20 years. And also if she's describing a title, is like, and you're going to be doing it for the WWE Intercontinental title. You know, always getting all those words are absolutely specifically correct to how WWE and Vince wants them.
Well, she's P.T. Barnum's daughter. So if you want to make an announcement, you accent everything you want to accent. And if you accent it, now it puts more emphasis on the word. And if you hear it, you'll put it together eventually if you hear it enough. See, the WWE, like if somebody has a catchphrase, you know, come up with a catchphrase that was good, like what? Remember, and they just did that a couple of times. He would say, what? Finally, the people, they heard it about twice. Then they started doing it. It's monkey see, monkey do. And basically, that teaches you how, if you say it enough, the people will say it too. It's like We the People. I want every real American to please rise, and We the People. Everybody would rise. Well, not everybody, but most of them would rise up. Even in Europe, they would all get up. They wanted to be like honorary Americans, I guess. But when I would go to Europe and France and Belgium and England and the UK, they all knew the lines, and they'd always say it with me, and I'd put my hand over my heart, and We the People, they'd all stand up.
You know when Jim Duggan was over here, that like in the early 90s for WWF, the fans chanted USA. It's amazing. Yeah. It's just like if the fans here, or maybe back then, maybe not so much now, but back then, if the fans here saw it on American TV, they would emulate it.
Yeah. And USA. Now, the woke crowd, they're trying to get to say, well, if you say USA, you're like, I don't know. You're like, there's something wrong with you if you say that. I don't get it. I don't get, I mean, if I say something, what, you got to pin a label on me? I mean, I got to agree with you. I don't agree with him. So,
you mentioned his name before, Kevin Dunn. You said to me, I don't know, 6 months ago when I asked you, or 5 months ago, do you see Kevin Dunn going soon? And you said yes, quite soon. And he's still there. I find that quite surprising.
Well, I think he pulled a power play too. Kevin Dunn knows where the bodies are buried. See what I mean? And I think I think an attempt was made to move him. And I think he did adjust his quick changes so much. He did adjust that somewhat, because I've noticed that. But just because I make a prediction doesn't mean it's going to come true. But I thought he would be gone, and I think he would be gone if Vince is not coming back. And if you want to know who the stooge was in the office that kept Vince informed on everything, who are we talking about?
Kevin Dunn.
Kevin Dunn. And that was his eyes and ears inside the office. So the more I think about this, the more espionage.
You're loving it.
And the more spying and all the stooging and the backstabbing. It's perfect wrestling. Perfect wrestling. It's like acting. I mean, if you can, sometimes when you compete in the back, it's all political. It's not what you can do. And if you can draw just as much as somebody else, who's going to get the really, really big push at the end? It's the one who's politically active, and the one that gets the brass, the higher ups. If you can sell them, you're in.
What would you get if you started buddying up with Kevin Dunn? What would you sort of be after politically? Like, how would that benefit your career?
Well, you'd eliminate if you could get Kevin talking in your behalf to Vince. That's half the battle. Just to get maybe Kevin to like you a little bit, no matter, I don't care who you are. If he said, all he's got to do is tell Vince, hey, that kid's got something. That guy's got something. And what did we just say? If you say it long enough, then Vince saying, yeah, pal, you might be right. Let's see what he can do. And you take off. And if they book you right, and if you got any kind of a personality at all and you can get it over, you're in. I mean, you can't just be pushed on wrestling ability alone. I mean, you can do all. Look at Ricochet. Ricochet is probably the best. I mean, some of the stuff he does is literally flawless. But he couldn't draw you a dime because he can't talk. People they don't really connect to him. They connect to his wrestling, but personally, they can't quite. There's something missing there. If he could talk, that guy'd be your main event guy.
We shall now talk about Saudi Arabia itself and why it's a good idea or maybe not a good idea. But it's been like 36 minutes in. We've not even really talked about it too much. But as we mentioned before, the stock has been up since January 5th. That was $70.94, and today it's $88.97. So no, I've already asked all that. So Entertainment Weekly speculate that WWE might sell for around $8.5 billion.
That's where I read that. Yeah. Who said that?
Entertainment Weekly has suggested that figure, although I think it's just a suggestion on their part. If there is a sale pending, then the announcement should be made quite soon because they've got to make it right with investors and they've got to make all this stuff public as soon as possible. Anyway, I wrote down a list of people that McMahon could sell to. Do you want me to do Saudi Arabia first, or should we go through the rest of them first?
And who predicted Saudi Arabia?
I didn't predict Saudi Arabia at all. You
really?
said you did about a month ago, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, but Saudi Arabia, go ahead.
Well, I'll throw out some other ones that were named over the last month or 2 or 3 or 2 years, whatever. The Rock and Nick Khan and a bunch of investors, that would have been a pretty good idea. Media conglomerates like Viacom, Disney, Comcast, etc. And the reason for that is because they'd save themselves, if nothing else, at least $465 million a year in rights fees by owning the company outright and have to pay it. Over-the-top subscription services like Netflix, NBC Universal, who own Peacock and USA Network, Prime, Hulu, etc. Endeavor, who own UFC, and is essentially as close as a business model as you can sort of get to WWE, I suppose, at this point. And the only other major investors in WWE are hedge fund managers and, have got a lot of stock in the company. So we will go to Saudi Arabia, and as I've written here, morally dubious McMahon selling to morally dubious Saudi Arabia. $620 billion in the investment pots. And why do you think it's a good idea to sell to Saudi, or maybe why do you think it's a bad idea?
Well, the good idea is because they have the money. And the next thing is they're a willing buyer. I've covered it before because WWE is already on the radar in Saudi Arabia. I don't think Saudi Arabia chose WWE to come in, what was 5-6 years ago?
2018 or something, yeah.
Okay. I don't think they invited them to come in just for no reason, because they want to upgrade their society to resemble more of the Western part of the world. And they want, some of their cities over there are just magnificent, especially where is Dubai? Dubai, is that a country?
United Arab Emirates. No, it is Riyadh. Riyadh, I think, is the capital of Saudi Arabia. What
is Dubai?
It's a great question. My missus used to work there, and I still don't know if it's a country or a city.
What the hell? But I read Dubai. Anyway, they're familiar with Saudi Arabia. We've discovered this. The Saudi Arabians are familiar with them.
Dubai is a popular city in the United Arab Emirates. There we go.
Okay, but they have the money and they already know WWE. The bad thing is, and I've been reading online because you're gonna get all kind of opinions online, is that a lot of fans don't like it because they consider WWE to be a uniquely American product. Turning it over to another country that would have input into the content of the show, they're not really in buying that so much. But I'm not reading that too much, but I am reading it quite frequently. But I think the fans is one of the lesser things you can consider, because you can win fans back if you make them mad, piss them off. It's the advertisers who may not want to join forces with this Saudi Arabian government because of their past human rights violations, because of killing that journalist Khashoggi in Turkey, in the embassy, in a Saudi embassy in Istanbul or wherever it was. Maybe a lot of people didn't hear that, but it made worldwide news. Plus, the government was involved. Of course, the Saudi Arabian government, denied all responsibility into that happening, and they have put those guys in jail in Saudi Arabia. Now, whether that was a rogue event, I don't know, but still, it gives Saudi Arabia a bad rap. Plus, the way they treat women, and the treatment of women in Saudi Arabia has gotten better. But the new, what is he? The new, not the president. What's his name?
The Crown Prince.
The Crown Prince. He wants to make Saudi Arabia more like a Western society, and this would be a good way to do it. See, since they bought that golf tour, put them on the map, but the golf tour hasn't been able to sell advertisers yet.
Even worse, they've not been able to get a TV deal anywhere, because obviously the PGA's got a foothold in every country in the world. And I'll give you an example of Live Golf. This won't mean I presume you're not a golf fan. I actually am. They've got Brooks Koepka, Phil Mickelson, Henrik Stenson, Paul Casey, Lee Westwood. Loads of big names they've lured over with huge money offers. So you've got loads of star quality names out there. They've apparently changed the golf game somehow to speed it up slightly. Bigger prize funds, and yet no country in the world will touch it and broadcast it. So if that's the case for golf,
what will be the case for WWE? And that's why we do the podcast, to bring these points out so our listeners are up to date. And hey, just because Saudi Arabia is leading the race to buy WWE, it doesn't mean that it's a done deal. I keep reading, it's not a done deal. And of course not. I mean, you don't just swap billions of dollars around without having 10,000 attorneys present, and they're going to dot every I and cross every T and make sure everything is where it should be. And I think even if they do agree in principle to buy WWE, I don't think it will become official for at least a year. Would it take them that long, you think?
For a company that big, yeah, it could well do. All that due diligence and everything. It's a costly, expensive, drawn-out procedure to get the lawyers as paid as much as possible. Do you think advertising will suffer, or maybe some of the companies that WWE works with, like Mattel, who make all their toys?
Hard to say. I'm not in the advertising business, so all I can offer is conjecture. And it's according to the product that, if it does sell, it's according to the product that WWE is putting out at the time. See, I don't know how much if it's Saudi controlled, will they say we're not going to touch creative? Because WWE does a lot of, USA military shows. And I don't know if the government of Saudi Arabia would agree to that. See, there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account here before a final deal is done. But let's go back to where we were 30 minutes ago. Vince is not going anywhere. Vince is still going to be there in that company, and he's going to get rid of all the people that he doesn't like, and he's going to fill it up with more people that are loyal to him and loyal to the company, and he'll just refill it up. Which brings me to another subject. Some of the talent have vocally said that they wouldn't go to Saudi Arabia, namely Sami Zayn and namely Kevin Owens, I guess because of his allegiance with Sami, I guess. And I never quite understood what Sami did. Is it something to do with the Syrians? He's Syrian, correct?
Yeah, he's of Syrian descent. And I tried to look this up as well, and it's very confusing. I know in the Syrian civil war that Saudi Arabia was providing weapons to the rebels, and I don't know if that's a problem for Sami or Sami's a problem for them in that sense. I genuinely don't know.
Some people are posting online, how many people will quit? And I'm thinking, well, I don't even see Sami quitting, really. I don't see Kevin Owens quitting. But you got to put it back in a personal vein. You're sitting in WWE, you're making $2 million a year. Are you going to have a political ideology dictate your income? If you're going to do that, you can't do anything, really. If you really wanted to buy something and it's from South Africa, oh, whoa, well, I can't buy that because of the way they treated whatever or anything else. And where is Sami going to make $2 million a year? Where's Kevin Owens going to make $2 million a year? Not many places. You're not going to make it on the independent scene. And that's a lot of shows you would have to do. I mean, to even come close to that amount. But so a lot of times when a wrestler says something, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You know, like, because they're talking to hear themselves talk, I guess, or to clarify a position. But when it really comes down to it, would they do it? And I'm saying I don't believe they'll do it. I don't believe that not one soul will walk out of WWE just because of the Saudi Arabian connection.
Well, that also brings up that John Cena didn't wrestle in Saudi Arabia. The Rock didn't wrestle, The Rock probably wouldn't, excuse me. I don't know if he's been approached to. And it's going to mean certain people who've got maybe Hollywood ambitions will not go over there, or maybe won't even want to be associated with WWE with Saudi Arabian owners. But they are sort of a class above, they've made their money and now they're away from wrestling and.
They don't need wrestling. If they told John Cena, we want you to go to Saudi Arabia, first of all, it's an 18-hour plane ride coming and going. He didn't need that. He doesn't need wrestling. He owes wrestling for what it did for him to make him a household name. But he can afford to do that. What I'm saying, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and guys of that caliber, I mean, if John Cena doesn't go to Saudi Arabia, he makes a movie. The Rock, he does something else. Runs his company. He doesn't need to. I mean, like he just got to have the money. But Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and people like that, they need to make that money while they can, because they're not getting any younger and their working days are numbered. So what are they going to do? It remains to be seen. I want to see a list. If this does go down, I would like to see a list of all those who stood up for their political ideology and beliefs and said, I'm done. I want to see that.
Well, when Brett and the Montreal Screwjob happened, everyone said they'd quit, and then they turned up the next day, apart from Mick Foley, I think. So I know that's a completely different situation, but in a sense, it's got some sort of similarity. What do you think is going to happen to women's wrestling? Less of it? None of it? Covered up more?
No.
Nothing?
Well, I've said I think that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia wants to change his country. He wants to make it more of a Western type society. And even though when the women go over there, they have to cover up, which I think they need to cover up now a little more, to tell you the truth. They look like strippers when they come. I mean, guys like it.
There's nothing wrong with that, Dutch.
But when you go down to when you're in Saudi Arabia, and if they came out like that, the whole crowd, half the crowd, it's all guys anyway, they'd fall over. I've never seen a woman like that because their culture and their religion forbids them from actually seeing a woman like that. I guess I'm not Muslim. I don't know a lot about those religions at all, but I do know that the girls, the females who went over there, they had to wear a shirt down to here to the wrists and cover up fully. But you still had women in the ring, so that and who had the first women's match in Saudi Arabia? Wasn't it Bianca and
Natty Neidhart,
Nikki?
maybe?
I don't know. Look it up.
Oh, okay.
You got your Google there.
I've
First
got my
women's
Google
match
here,
in Saudi.
Well, while I look for this, and I'm going to give you another comment. Really, is I think part of the problem or worry is with Saudi Arabia is that they want to at least seem more progressive on the outside to get more companies involved, get more sponsorship, get more money rolling into Saudi. Not that they need any more, apparently. But really nothing on the inside is actually changing. It's purely a PR stunt.
What is a PR stunt? Buying WWE?
No, I don't quite mean that. I mean, it's a PR stunt to, let's say, buy a company or buy like an internationally recognized company like WWE or Live Golf or have tennis tournaments over or whatever, and then get their propaganda out there that, hey, we're really actually more progressive, to increase tourism or whatever else it may be. But actually, there's not really any real change happening.
Again, I'm going to go back to, you just came back from Norway, correct?
I did.
Okay. If you went to Saudi Arabia, I mean, I don't know what they want you to see there. I mean, you can't go in there. They say you can't drink in Saudi Arabia, but you can. You just got to find the spot, I guess. And they have a very conservative type society, which they want to keep. They don't want a lot of people. They don't want a lot of drug users. They don't want a lot of drinkers. They don't want to have, they don't want to have people infiltrating their society that they feel is bad for the country. Now, I'm not going to go on record as saying who they like and who they don't, but the more I think about this, it's the more variables you can throw back and forth. And of course, the biggest one is we just said was the sponsors, and then the talent to me is like on the lower rung, because it's like a football team. If you don't have a starting quarterback, guess what you do? You take the second string quarterback and put him in there. If he gets hurt, you put the third string quarterback in there, and you keep going until you just don't have enough people to field a team. I've seen football teams that got three quarterbacks. They all got hurt. They put they put one of their running backs up there, and he got hurt. Yeah, the masked quarterback. I love that. But
no, the mascot.
Hey, that's not a bad idea to run a guy on the field with a mask on a football helmet. That would make news. And you say, hey, he's so and so, and there's no rule that says he couldn't play with a mask, but with a mask on.
You misheard me slightly, Dutch. I said the mascot.
I understood that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said mascot.
Run the mascot out. You could run the mascot out there too. I did hear you.
Oh, it was like maybe an 8-foot helmet over a tiger or something like that.
I was thinking if you ran out of quarterbacks, then put a mask on somebody and run them out there. He don't even have to be on.
It made me watch finally. Oh,
I'd watch it. I'd watch it.
Natalia and Lacey Evans, by the way. That was the first women's match in Saudi Arabia.
Really?
It was.
That is actually a good note to have. That you said, well, I wrestled in the first female match in Saudi Arabia. I mean, and that will never change when you have an accomplishment like that.
We're on the last page now, Dutch. I'm sure you'll be happy to hear. I thought I'd throw this one on just because it just amuse me. Right. Where does this leave Shane McMahon?
Good question. He may be there and he may not be. Because Shane, when he left, I don't know if he was forced out or asked to leave, but I think he left on like bad terms. I don't know if he still has any stock in the company or not.
Don't think so. No, if he has, it's very little.
Well, I don't even have an opinion on Shane. But don't count him out again. He has the same genes as Vince has, so don't count him out either.
Well, I just looked here. It says, however, Shane owns around 2.5 million equity shares of WWE's common stock, so not the voting stock anyway.
Yeah, we'll see.
Did you hear the story? Because I wrote this down for you, that he was fired after he came up with a load of creative for the Royal Rumble last year that involved him coming out first and beating up a load of the top stars and like going toe to toe with Brock Lesnar.
Well, you can also credit Vince McMahon for putting the kibosh on his own son going out there and dominating that Battle Royal. Was that what it was? The Royal Rumble?
Same thing, basically, yeah.
Yeah, he said, and Vince at least had the sense to say, we would never recover from that PR fiasco. Said we would be blasted from here to noon if we allowed that to happen. Now, I will say one thing about Shane. He did pick up the art pretty well and took some really dangerous moves. When he come off the top of the cage onto that table. Listen, I'm going to put it, if you make everything personal, you kind of understand it more. If they had told me to get on top of that cage and jump off and go through that table, you know what I'd have said? No, I would. You couldn't melt and pour me on top of that cage. I'm afraid of heights. I'm dangerously afraid of heights. And I damn sure wouldn't have come up with that idea myself, but he did. And he's done a lot of, I saw him do a drop kick off one corner to the other. He put a trash can in front of his dad's face and he kicked the trash can. It went into his face. That's kind of a harder move to do than what it looks like. But he would do a lot of crazy stuff like that without any formal, he got trained a little bit, I guess. So, they trained him there in Stanford for his debut. And he actually did pretty good with it. But where this leaves him now, I have no idea.
Did you see him work as a referee maybe in the mid-90s? Or did he have any other roles in the company?
Nope. I didn't even know he existed, to tell you the truth. I've heard of him. But in the 90s, when I was there, I didn't see him that I recall. I may have seen him, but he didn't play a role in anything.
You said you were afraid of heights. Are you afraid of flying?
Nah, not so much flying, but I am afraid of heights.
Did you ever? Right, this isn't about Vince. So I just want to know. Did you ever go on the? I believe Cornette termed it the jabroni jets when you were with Crockett.
Oh yeah, I went on that. But now Cornette, when he talks about flying, he is deathly afraid of flying. He would rather drive than, if he's got to stay over halfway there, he'll stay over and go to the town or go to wherever he's got to go to and come back. He'd stay over coming back to get back to wherever, Charlotte, I would say, where he was at the time. Yeah, Crockett had a Gulfstream I don't know, a nice plane. You could probably get 18 people, 20 people on it. And so sometimes I would go into the office, you'd go in the office, you pick up your check or whatever. And I would see the guy in there who was in charge of the flying crew. And I said, hey, man, get me on that plane. And he said, I don't think I got room. I said, oh, come on, man. Come on. He put me down. So that meant that instead of leaving at 3 o'clock or 2:30, you could leave on the jet at 5:30. And then, of course, the 3-hour drive back in, you come back in 45 minutes. So you got in early. And he didn't charge anybody to take the plane. He just flew it up there. So that was one good thing Crockett did do. He would fly some of his talent to the shows and back.
Did Bobby Jaggers get a seat as well?
Bobby Jaggers was on the plane too at times. So I've seen a lot of card games on those planes, almost some fights over the card game on the plane up there. We'd have to separate some guys. It'd be Robert Gibson and whoever he was playing that day, Ricky Morton. I've seen them almost get in a fight over a card game. And I forgot, I think Ricky was winning or Robert was winning. One of them got mad and they threw cards at each other and they got in each other's face. And I said, come on, guys, calm down. It was funny to me because I knew they really wasn't going to fight, but they really got mad at each other. The plane ride up there was actually enjoyable, and the pilots were good. So that's what I
Jimmy Garvin
like.
Or something. It was never Jimmy Garvin or Ronnie Garvin or someone flying you, was it?
No, but Jimmy could fly, and Ronnie could fly. And I don't know what got them into flying, and I think Jimmy actually ended up making it somewhat of a career later on after wrestling.
I'll ask you a couple more questions about Vince McMahon and about the whole situation. And Triple H will bring up now, where does this leave the day-to-day creative? Do you truly believe that Vince is not going to be taking over creative?
Do I truly believe it? Not really. But I think now Vince has a project that he needs to devote 100% of his time to. I don't think he has time to sit down with creative because a lot of creative time is lost. Just throwing ideas back and forth, and that's not his job now. His job now is to facilitate the sale or the transfer of WWE to a new owner. And I think that's what he's going to concentrate on. Plus, he's going to have to talk to the stockholders, and he's going to have to talk to a lot of people. So he's going to have a job 24 hours a day just doing what he's doing now because it's not cut and dried like it was before.
What about when it's
sold?
They
can't come in. Say what now?
What about when it's sold? Does Vince then get bored?
Oh, he's still there. No, he's still there. He is ingrained in whatever this deal is. Vince is still going to be there. Whether he's able to physically go in the office, because at 77, and he still moves well. I mean, that he can't go in there anymore or he keeps his mind about him, he's going to be right there. And when he dies, he will still, I'm making a prediction, whether it comes true or not. I think whatever happens and whoever takes over WWE, Vince is going to be in the deal somewhere. I don't care if Comcast takes it over. I don't care if HBO takes it over. He has 83% of the voting shares. He's going to vote himself a spot in that new company.
With Triple H currently day-to-day chief creative officer, however it's phrased, you said that you think Vince will eventually... How do you think it's going to happen if Vince starts sticking his oar in? Do you think it's going to be a suggestion here or there, or do you think just one day he's just going to look at a show and hate it and go, God damn it, pal, I'm taking over, and it'll just be like that?
Hard to say. But then again, I'll go back to what I said before. I think all his time is going to be taken up with the transfer. to whoever company it goes to. I think he's got to get that done first, and then he'll worry about it. WWE's not going anywhere. But if the Saudi Arabian government presents a challenge to the advertisers that they don't want to advertise on the show, then they got another problem. Now they got to look for another buyer. And another buyer would be there. And they may get less for it. But I still think, and I predicted about 3 years ago that WWE would be sold within 3 years. Now, I'm not a Nostradamus. I just said something that happened to may possibly come true. But anyway, I was ahead of the game anyway. But when you think about all these companies selling to somebody else, especially a media company like WWE, it's interesting to me. And to me, and I told you earlier, if we made a long trip, we could talk about this the whole way going, the whole way back. And I have solved a lot of the world's problems on some of these trips. And then I got back and couldn't remember what I'd solved. I couldn't remember the answer.
Let's have a look. Oh, very briefly, Triple H, out of 10, how do you think he's done as a booker?
Oh, I think he's done great. He's made it more concise. He's made it more pointed. He's directed it, which doesn't really take a genius to do. Just zero your angles. I mean, sharpen them up a little bit. I think the Bray Wyatt deal they've done is great, but I think that's more Bray than it is Triple H. But I think they've really, really done. Since Vince left, I think they've done the creative, especially on SmackDown. I'm not so familiar with Raw, but on SmackDown, it's been like a 75 to 80% improvement.
I will talk about the NDAs briefly, then we'll get to our final question or two, and then we will shut this podcast down. And all the more surprising that Vince is coming back. Obviously, he's forced himself back in. Might be an inappropriate choice of words there. I was going to say 2 more women have come forth with accusations again. The first is renewed accusations. Rita Chatterton, the referee. Another lady, ex-California Spa manager in 2011. Both New York and California have recently reopened brief windows where you can complain about historical sex offences and basically taken back to court. As of now, those lawsuits neither of them have been settled. Vince has said he won't pay either of them out. But most importantly, the board, I don't know if this has come from the board, but it's come from somewhere that has said that all these accusations and NDAs and everything, these aren't the last that we're going to hear. There are more that the board are aware of that the public at large aren't. So I find that quite interesting that Vince is, back at this time and not waiting a few more months at least.
Well, whether these accusations are true or not, I don't know. I would tend to believe that where there's smoke, there's fire. But what I think has happened is they see Vince paying all these people off, and they see an opportunity to get in on the bandwagon. And I think I may file my lawsuit a little bit later this week because he did make some inappropriate comments to me while I was there. And he made me, it was just, I'm not going to say what he did. It was just inappropriate. I was just in a pair of trunks and he looked at me and said something. And I'm going to have to consult my legal source, see if I have any kind of a suit coming. And I won't ask for $1 million. I'll just ask for 300, 400,000.
I'll keep you. I'll keep you for a while.
Yeah. See.
Let me see what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to just go straight to the final question. One more thing about Vince I found out yesterday, and I have not written this down here, so you may not know the answer. Do you know who called the McMahon family after the Vince McMahon limo blowing up thing in 2007?
Who called the McMahon family?
Yeah, to make sure that Vince was okay.
Oh, I think about 1,000 fans called.
Someone very famous called.
I don't know who. Who was it?
Donald Trump.
Oh, I did read that.
Yeah.
But see, well, when I saw it, I'm sitting there. Allegedly, I'm a member of the wrestling profession, and nobody was blown up. But how did they get that to look so real? He had just gotten in, and that's what you have when you have pros doing it. You see him getting in, and then they take the same shots, and he gets out, and you take the same shot before, then it blows up. And I'm thinking, and that limo couldn't have been cheap. I mean, I doubt if you could put that limo on insurance. That limo was probably $100,000 then. And I'm thinking, wow.
Extended warranty.
But it did look, yeah, it was under warranty. It did look very, very legit. And that's where the WWE used to be, because their stuff looked good. And if you just halfway believe it, they still win. See what I mean? All you have to do is they'll believe. I got an old saying: wrestling fans will believe in a scenario till you give them a reason to disbelieve it. And I've done that several times during my career, because people watching, you don't sell out because the people don't believe. You sell out because they want to see one guy win, but also there has to be a matter of believability to at least the setup to it, not necessarily the actual work, but the setup to it and the payoff. I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, wrestling's fake," and they say, "Yeah, but I saw this match one time. They really, really got mad at each other." And that's what you're going for. And when that limo blew up, it got me. So
for now, we will close the podcast there. That's probably your favorite. Is that your favorite Vince McMahon story that you saw as a fan?
Oh, as a fan? Oh, I liked all of it. Vince was the greatest heel they ever had. Vince, because you take it back to a personal level. You hate your boss because the boss tells you to do this and do that, and he's dismissive or whatever. And a lot of people, Vince is the boss, and he's trying to run over Steve Austin, and Steve won't do it. He won't go for it. And the people love that. And Vince, what a great heel. Those huge ratings that they did, a lot of them were due to Vince himself, because that was one of the greatest stories I've ever seen on TV, and especially at WWE. Because Vince was the boss, and Austin not following. And one of the greatest angles I ever saw when Vince, when Stone Cold, he gave the cutter to the whole family, and they were all laying around, even Linda. And he come in and said, Linda, I'm not gonna. You got enough to deal with that son of a bitch. Then he kicked her. Boom. Big pop. But see, back in those days, you weren't supposed to touch a woman, because that again created violence against women. Whether it did or not, I don't know. But all of a sudden, that's gone now.
We will thank you very much for watching. That was the Vince McMahon special, or the Saudi Arabia special, the Stephanie McMahon resigning special, whatever you want to call it. I've got 2 books. Dutch has got 2 books. You heard the plug at the beginning, but for now, thank you very much for watching. I think we've got we'll have another show coming out on Friday, I think. So plenty of content for you to be getting on with. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and we the people, Dutch.
We the people.